Good afternoon and welcome to the AMCP webinar hosted by Formulary Decisions titled Harnessing the Power of AI in Health Evidence Generation Strategy. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. My name is Sarah Downen and I will be your moderator for today's session. As with every AMCP webinar, we would like to remind everyone of the proprietary nature of this material. In addition, this presentation will be recorded and made available on the Cencora website within the next week. Again, the information presented is proprietary and is intended for general informational purposes only. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping items for the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. In a few moments, we will actually try out our Q&A feature a little bit. You will see a box pop up, just like the screen right now, with a few questions. Click on your answer choices to submit your responses. At any time, we really encourage you to submit your questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. These questions will only be viewable to the speakers and me, the moderator. During the question and answer session, I will announce your question and allow for some responses from our speakers. And with that, it is my pleasure now to introduce our speakers today. Like I said, my name is Sarah Downen, and I'm a fellow here at Cencora in Health Outcomes and Market Access. And I am joined today by Mike, who is our Senior Director at NAI Platform Solutions, and Ali, who is a Director in Real World Evidence, and Malia, who is a Manager in Evidence Generation and Value Communications, and last but certainly not least, Zaid, who is a Manager in Value and Access Strategy. It's a pleasure to have you all on today. And with that, let's introduce some of our cool polling questions next. So can you please answer some of these questions? These are like just three really generic questions that just help us to get us a little bit like more of an insight of who our audience actually is. So the first one being, which organization type do you most closely identify with? We would also like to know how you would rank your familiarity with AI in general, and also how knowledgeable you are about the use of AI in health evidence generation specifically. And that box should be on your screen right now, and I'm going to give you a few seconds to just complete those three little questions. Okay, and the questions and answers are in, and it looks like we have a really great representative sample here in our audience. The majority here with 27% comes from our payer and hospital and health system space. And when it comes to the questions of how you would rank your level of familiarity with AI, the majority is like on the 2 to 3, so not extremely familiar here. So it's perfect that you joined us today to learn a little bit more about this topic. And then when it comes to knowledgeable or like knowledge level about AI and health evidence generation, again, the majority here is in the lower numbers, so not as familiar or as knowledgeable as you might want to be. So perfect that you joined us today. Thank you for completing those quick polling questions. And with that, I would like to turn it over now to Zaid, who will discuss AI adoption and perception among healthcare decision makers.
Thank you, Sarah. So Formulary Decisions conducted research to kind of understand the perception and adoption of AI with healthcare decision makers, who I'll be referring to as HCDMs going forward, and we'll be sharing some of those results. So the use of AI has been definitely spiking up over the past couple of years, especially by people within the healthcare industry. So when we asked HCDMs, how do you utilize AI within your day-to-day activities? And we see two main buckets in here. So the top row really shows that it's been used a lot within the administrative tasks. And also at the very bottom of the slide, it shows that HCDMs have also been using it within the clinical realm of things. So when they were asked these questions, they really specified exactly how they utilize that. So on the administrative side, they talked about claims adjudication and detection of reimbursement discrepancies and also fraudulent health claims. Now, they mentioned that this has led to a speeding up of the administrative processes within their organization and has led to a lot of efficiency gains by their teams, which we'll also be discussing in more details later on. Now, on the clinical side of things, they mentioned that they've been using it to prepare and summarize monographs and research papers, and even all the way to predicting patient outcomes and automating some of the chart reviews and care plans. So really what we get from this slide and from the answers that were provided by the ACDMs is that AI is really heavily being used in aggregating evidence and also at times generating evidence at those organizations. Now, the ACDMs really looked very favorably towards AI. In fact, the majority of them felt that it's an extremely valuable tool that they have in their toolbox to use in evidence generation and aggregation. And given that this is a new technology, they also very favorably felt very comfortable in leveraging those tools in the toolbox when it comes to evidence generation and synthesis of the evidence. So that really speaks to the potential of AI within different teams in the healthcare industry and how it could be utilized to the benefit of the teams. Now, this slide really summarizes a lot of things that we touched upon, but the main thing expressed by ACDMs is that there was an increase in efficiency within those teams due to the reduction of time that it took to complete certain tasks. So given a lot of the tasks were administrative and also clinical in nature, they did see that there has been an enhanced data quality and also improved overall patient experience by utilizing AI within their organizations. Now, of course, with any new technology, especially AI, there are some concerns by the people who are using it, especially if it's being used for the first time within a large or even a small organization. So some of the concerns that were expressed by the ACDMs included the safety and reliability of the information, but also the transparency and the privacy as it relates to the data that they're inputting into the system and the data that they're getting out of the system. And last but not least, they did mention the cost of utilizing the AI for the organization. We know that technology, and especially AI, is not free nor cheap, and it does require a lot of compute power. So those concerns in terms of how much resources do they need to spend to implement AI within their organization were some of the concerns that were also brought up by ACDMs. So finally, and to wrap it up, how do we mitigate some of those concerns? So yes, we acknowledge that there are those concerns by the ACDMs, and how do we go about it? So when we asked that question and we posed it to the ACDMs, they did say that they felt really comfortable in working with third-party businesses to support them with their mission and their journey of integrating AI into the different workflows. And some of the areas that they mentioned included automation of analyses and reviews, and evidence summarization and synthesis, and finally, predictive model creation. So we really see that there is a need from ACDMs in terms of using AI within their organization, but given the fears, a lot of that could also be mitigated by working with third parties that can support them along their journey. And with that, I'll hand it off to Ali to talk about AI and evidence generation.
Thanks, Zaid. As my colleague perfectly highlighted the importance and adoption of AI by healthcare decision makers, now let's take a moment to explore some of the remarkable capabilities AI brings to evidence generation. AI has revolutionized how we integrate and analyze data, providing us with advanced tools to navigate complex data sets. Effective data integration is essential for generating solid evidence. AI plays a pivotal role here, automating and streamlining the merging of diverse data sources here, which ultimately boosts our findings. Consider patient recruitments in clinical trials. By combining data from clinical studies with real-world patient information, AI can pinpoint potential candidates more effectively. This is not only enhanced the efficiency of recruitments, it also enhance the diversity of the study population, which aligns with the goals set forth by FDA in 2022 regarding diversity in clinical trials. Another key area where data integration shines is in post-marketing surveillance. AI's ability to merge data from official adverse events reporting system with insights from social media and patient forums help us detect and assess drug safety signals in real time. Now let's talk about predictive analytics, which is aspects of AI is making waves in healthcare by facilitating more accurate predictions, enabling proactive interventions, and paving the way for personalized care. By analyzing patient data, AI can signal early signs of disease or track progression of chronic conditions such as diabetes, cardiovascular disease, or cancer. This proactive approach can lead to timely intervention that mitigate disease impacts. A great example of this is in crafting personalized treatment plans. AI can forecast how individuals might respond to specific medication by analyzing their medical history, genetic makeup, and lifestyle factors. This targeted approach helps healthcare providers select the most effective treatments for their patients. We cannot overlook the impact of natural language processing, a vital subset of AI that significantly enhances how we generate healthcare evidence. NLP can sift through extensive scientific literature to identify gaps in evidence and extract valuable insights from unstructured clinical notes, electronic health records, medical reports, and transforming them into structured data, which eventually is going to use in different AI models. Additionally, NLP can streamline the systematic review process by effectively screening and summarizing appropriate research articles. It can pull essential information such as study outcomes, methodology, and conclusion, helping us spot under-researched topics. As you can see, improving the extraction and structuring of clinical data not only leads to more accurate patients' records, but also elevate the quality of the care we provide. Additionally, by accelerating the lit review and data extraction processes, we can generate new evidence more swiftly. Next slide, please. With all the capabilities AI brings here, it's important to acknowledge the limitations that can affect its effectiveness and reliability. Understanding these challenges is essential for the responsible integration of AI into our healthcare system. First and foremost, AI models are only as good as the data they trained on. If the data is incomplete, inaccurate, or biased, the outcome can be unreliable. In healthcare, data is often spread across different systems and institutions, and inconsistency in data formats can complicate integration and analysis. When AI predictions are flawed or biased, they can lead to inappropriate treatment or misdiagnosis, which, as you can imagine, the consequences could be heavy for patients and also providers. Also, limited generalizability of AI models can create disparities in quality of care across different populations and settings. Another big challenge is the complexity of many AI models, which can make them difficult to understand and interpret. The lack of transparency can erode trust between healthcare providers and patients, slowing down the adoption. If healthcare professionals view AI tools as unreliable to their practice, and also the disruptive to their workflow, they may resist using them. Navigating the intricate regulatory landscape for AI application in healthcare can also be daunting and time-consuming. This often leads to delay in implementation and additional costs for compliance. However, there are different strategies we can employ to mitigate these challenges. For instance, establishing clear frameworks for regulatory compliance and ethical consideration is vital. The National Institute for Healthcare Excellence in the UK, short abbreviation is NICE, position statements on AI in evidence generation exemplify this approach. They are highlighting the organization commitment to integrating AI while ensuring the integrity and quality of its guidance. It underscores the importance of using AI to enhance evidence generation without compromising the standards that guide NICE decision-making. NICE also emphasized the need for transparency and collaboration in developing AI tools, advocating for a balanced approach that incorporates input from various stakeholders. Overall, NICE position reflects a curious yet optimistic view of AI's role in healthcare, highlighting the commitment to rigorous evaluating and continuous improvement in evidence-based guidance. With that, I will hand it over to my colleague Malia, who will discuss practical application and best practices for using AI in evidence generation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ali, for expanding upon AI's capabilities and limitations. Now I'm going to be touching on practical applications and best practices. So I'm going to go through a few examples where we are already seeing AI use in evidence generation and evidence synthesis. Here we have AI-assisted literature reviews, or more specifically, AI-assisted literature screening. We know that there is a vast amount of published scientific evidence out there, and literature reviews are a great way to identify evidence to answer research questions. However, any time that we're wanting to sift through large amounts of data, it's a good time to stop and consider whether maybe it would be a good use case for AI. And we are seeing AI being applied in the literature review process. So one of the most common methodologies is we're seeing a small training set of references screened by human reviewers tagging whether those articles are relevant or not relevant for a particular literature review. Then the AI uses this as a training set and is able to screen the remaining references and provide a recommendation for whether those remaining references should be included or excluded in the literature review. This AI step happens very quickly, almost instantaneously. So that demonstrates the increased efficiency of using AI in this process. For systematic literature reviews, where dual review is the gold standard, AI can act as the second reviewer. So one human reviewer, one AI reviewer, and with any conflicts resolved by another human, which is great because it provides an integrated quality check for the AI. Now, when exactly is this being used? Literature reviews typically have two stages, a review at the title and abstract level and a review at the full text level. And we're typically seeing this methodology being applied during that first stage, during the title abstract screening phase. Full text articles are more complicated with a lot of information being communicated in tables and figures. And as we see the development of multimodal AIs that can digest those tables and figures, we'll likely see an increasing amount of research on using AI-assisted screening at that full text level as well. So we're seeing AI literature reviews being used for systematic literature reviews intended for publication or to inform internal strategy, as well as targeted reviews that require the evaluation of large therapeutic areas. However, as Ali mentioned, NICE has released that position statement on AI, focusing on transparency and early engagement with NICE. So we also predict we'll see a growing interest in using AI-assisted literature reviews for regulatory submissions in the future. Other areas of development include revising this methodology for increased efficiency and additional transparency. Next slide, please. Next here, we have AI-assisted plain language summaries. So this is another example where we're seeing AI being used in evidence generation and evidence synthesis. We're often wanting to communicate complex scientific findings, and it's often useful to be able to communicate these findings to a wider audience. So AI can take the first draft of a manuscript or take a draft of a manuscript or report and create a first draft of a plain language summary. This is really helpful because one can be done quickly, but you can also provide some additional guidance such as desired reading level of the summary. AI generates that first draft, and then it can be reviewed by a medical writer or subject matter expert. Again, it's much easier to edit and revise something rather than starting from scratch. So in addition to being helpful for broader communication, plain language summaries are increasingly required by scientific journals for submission, so that's another benefit. One element of this methodology I wanted to point out is we're often seeing this being done on a closed system or firewalled AI that doesn't connect to the internet. And this is because that manuscript or report might not be published or released to the public yet. So if we're using a firewalled AI, then that material and the output is not accessible to other users and also not being used to train the AI. Like I said, right now, this is often being applied to manuscripts and reports, but in the future, we expect to see this sort of process applied to other types of evidence as well. Next slide, please. So those are just a few examples of how AI is already being used, and we might touch on some more during our panel discussion and question and answer session. However, based on our experiences, we also wanted to share some best practices that can be applied to all AI use cases. First off, we have human AI collaboration. So it's really important to have that human in the loop process that validates the AI output and provides feedback. This emphasizes that human experts are still critical just to make sure that the AI output is accurate and helpful. Next, we have data governance, security, and privacy. These are all foundational elements to successfully implement and operate AI systems. Best practices is to adhere strictly to any data protection laws and organizational policies to ensure that all data shared with AI systems is secure. Our next best practice is adaptability and scalability. As we explore use cases, we recommend thinking about whether the process or workflow is scalable. Can you grow it? And whether any elements need to be adapted for increased use. Then we have transparency and accountability. I think this goes hand in hand with other best practices here listed on this slide in order to have human AI collaboration, to have proper use of data and scalability. We need to be able to transparently document AI processes and implement guardrails for accountability. Finally, last but certainly not least, we have education and training. And this is one of the reasons my colleagues and I were so excited to be a part of this webinar. We definitely want to promote continuous learning and ongoing innovation surrounding AI. So with that, I'll pass it back to Sarah to begin the question, answer, and panel discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Malia. And thank you to our other speakers, Zaid and Ali, for introducing the concept and the current status of AI in health evidence generation. And like Malia just said, we will now take a few questions from the audience to further dive into the topic. And I can see already looking over here on my chat that we have already received quite a few questions from the audience. And please feel free to continue dropping in your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to them as soon as possible. So let's get started with the first question here. And this one is, how can evidence generation teams successfully incorporate AI? Really important. And I think I'm just going to turn it over to Malia again. Like, how would you elaborate on that?
Thanks, Sarah. And that's a great question to start us off. So I think in order to use AI successfully, I think evidence generation teams can first identify areas or problems where AI might be helpful. Then in my mind, the next step is to test and validate. So try out that AI-assisted workflow and determine whether the output meets expectations. After that, it's likely going to be an iterative process, not a one-time process, something you have to test over and over again, incorporating human feedback as you go. Finally, again, I'll emphasize that education and innovation point. I feel like many of us are exploring how we can use AI in our everyday work, and we can learn a lot by sharing those examples. Sometimes I feel at large organizations or on large teams, everyone is testing AI in their own silo. But when we break down those barriers and share findings cross-functionally, I think that can really end up driving innovation.
Thank you so much, Malia. And I love that point on like sharing the information and being a little bit more cross-functional. And on that point, I actually would like to hear a little bit more from Ali in your line of work in the real world evidence team. Like, how does that apply for you? How can evidence generation teams successfully incorporate AI from your perspective?
This is a great question. Again, I appreciate it. Incorporating AI, as we discussed through the webinar, is in evidence generation is specifically significant. It's going to bring significant advantage, primarily by enhancing efficiency and accuracy in data analysis. AI can process the vast amount of information and data we have in unprecedented speed and enabling team to uncover insights and trends that may be overlooked by human beings if used traditional methods. This capability not only accelerates decision making, but also allows for more robust and nuanced analysis, ultimately leading to improving the quality. AI can automate repetitive tasks, which is usually within real-world evidence. That's the thing we do all the time, is repetitive tasks. By automating the repetitive tasks, freeing team members to focus on higher value activities such as interpreting results and strategic planning. That is the benefit of AI. Adopting AI is going to be. Overall, if I want to put them the benefit or the general how to use evidence generation incorporating AI, I would say it would enhance the data analytics, improve efficiency, and using better predictive capabilities like AI algorithms, as I said, can identify trends and predict outcome based on historical data. This predictive power can guide decision-making, helping teams to anticipate the impact of interventions, which is really important within the realm of real-world evidence team.
Well, thank you so much for those insights. And I think I'm going to just stick with you for a second there, because the next question kind of connects to that very first introductory question here. Why should evidence generation teams incorporate AI in their work process in the first place? You kind of touched on that a little bit. Can you elaborate further?
Yeah, again, absolutely. As I said, again, AI foster innovation by enabling teams to explore more advanced methodologies such as predictive modeling and machine learning, which can enhance the reliability of their findings. By adopting AI, evidence generation teams can stay competitive, respond swiftly to emerging challenges, and ultimately drive better healthcare outcomes. As the consistency and accuracy is another big buckets. That's why we should, in evidence generation, adopting AI, because AI systems can consistently apply the same criteria across large data sets, reducing the variability that can arise from human analysis. This leads to more reliable and reproducible results, if I may say. The other thing is like the scalability. AI enables evidence generation team to scale their efforts more effectively, handling larger data set and more complex analysis. Finally, but not the least one, personalized insight. AI can help in generate evidence that is more tailored to a specific population or subgroup. For example, AI-driven analysis can uncover insights related to specific demographic characteristics, enabling more personalized approach to healthcare, as I mentioned in my conversation.
Well, thank you, Ali. I really love that additional detail here, and I think this helps our audience have a little bit better understanding of the concept. And I would like to hear actually from Mike as well, knowing that you work with processes and our best practices when it comes to AI. So again, the question being, why should evidence generation teams incorporate AI in their work processes?
Thanks, Sarah. And yeah, I agree with Ali's points as well. I would also add that AI really opens up new avenues for personalized medicine and innovative discoveries. When you think about the vast amount of data from diverse sources in various formats, like electronic health records, clinical trials, literature, patient feedback, even physician SOAP notes, and many more, we're looking at historic opportunities to leverage real-world data, opportunities that did not exist before using traditional AI tools or traditional analytical tools. When you think about the impact of natural language processing, specifically using large language models, the ability to process unstructured data is game-changing. Generative AI alleviates the very manually intensive process of reading, summarizing, transforming, translating, categorizing, and extracting key data points and insights. This could not be done at scale before generative AI. Also, the advance of advanced algorithms, computing power, applying new unsupervised machine learning techniques can now find hidden patterns that were not obvious to human researchers before, often uncovering causal relationships and more granular predictions with highly stratified patient populations. Of course, there are challenges to overcome, such as data privacy, transparency, and the need for oversight, but the potential benefits make a compelling case for the incorporation of AI into evidence generation.
Thank you, Mike. And I think that was a beautiful summary to kind of end that line of questioning on. Like, definitely, it seems there's like a clear benefit of using AI in this line of work. So thank you so much for that very detailed and comprehensive summary. Let's move on to another question here. What implications does the growing adoption of AI in evidence generation pose for the industry? That's a really interesting one. And I think I'm going to start here with Ali again. In your line of work with real-world evidence, what implications do you see?
Yeah, as you said, again, increasing adoption of AI in evidence generation carries profound implication. I would like to bucket like this response in different categories. Like the first comes to mind and we discuss is like transforming of research practices. The impact in transforming the research is going to be speed and efficiency. AI significantly accelerates the research process, enabling faster data analysis and evidence generation, which we discussed this one. This reduced the time from hypothesis to discovery to generating results. The other area in this under transforming research area is going to be shift in skill requirements. As AI becomes integral, there are growing needs for professionals with expertise in data science, machine learning, AI-driven research methodology, and the list goes on. Traditional roles may evolve, requiring ongoing education and skilling. The other bucket is going to be enhanced decision-making. Data-driven insights, AI ability to analyze large data set to identify patterns lead to more robust and data-driven decision-making. Another piece is going to be predictive analytics under decision-making bucket, which is going to be, we discussed about that. AI predictive modeling helps forecast outcomes, and you can adopt that into personalized medicine to see how people would be reacting, utilizing their past history. The other piece is going to be regulatory and ethical challenges, as we discussed, and Molly also pointed to that. There are more bodies adopting like AI and coming up with the guidelines regarding regulatory oversight. And as AI-driven evidence becomes more prevalent, regulatory bodies may need to adopt their framework to ensure the safety, efficacy, ethical use of AI. And eventually, on the competitive differentiation, organizations that successfully integrate AI into their evidence generation processes can gain a competitive advantage and driving innovation and posing themselves as a leader in the field. That's like the main four buckets come to my mind, like the implication of the AI.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
That sounds really fantastic. Malia, I think I want to hear from you as well. And maybe like similar to what Ali just did in like those four buckets, can you just like kind of describe like the positives and then the negatives, or like the, kind of hurdles that we have to jump when it comes to the implication that growing adoption of AI has in your line of work in evidence generation?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with a lot of what Ali has already discussed. I think there are likely to be many positive implications as we see growing use and adoption of AI, particularly those accelerating research timeframes, being able to digest and take conclusions from data in a much quicker timeframe, and then also being able to integrate new and different sources of data, being able to summarize all that together, all leading to new discoveries and insight. So I think those are likely to be some of the positive implications. However, I think there'll also be some key challenges. I anticipate that obtaining quality data sets is going to be one of those challenges. When it comes to AI, the quality of the input informs the quality of the output. So data gaps can make analysis more difficult and potentially lead to bias. That being said, bias is still a concern even with robust data sets, and it's important to understand what data was used to train the AI model. It's important to consider how the AI was trained and what purpose the AI was designed for. And I think that's particularly applicable to our field in the healthcare industry, where some AI models may be trained on a greater proportion of scientific data versus maybe broader sources.
Yeah, thank you. And you mentioned a really important point. Basically, like the AI is only as smart or as useful as the information that it was fed and how it was trained on. And I think it's really important. Also, your other point on the quality, it is really something that I see in the chat coming up multiple times. So thank you for adding that to it. The next question, I think, is a really fun one. It's asking, is the term AI used too broadly in evidence generation, complicating meaningful discussions? I really like that one. And I think I want to start off with Mike again, just for like your depth of experience with AI. What do you think? Is it too broad?
Sure. I think the short answer is yes. I think it was Arthur C. Clarke, the famous science fiction writer, who said, any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. So when we use the term AI as shorthand for various smart and learnable technologies, we are in essence saying the word magic instead of AI, because we stay at that high level and don't delve into the mechanics of it. We know AI is an umbrella term that covers machine learning, natural language processing, generative AI, computer vision, intelligent automation, and so forth. But not specifying these techniques does cause confusion and perhaps overpromises what the technology can do. Stakeholders who hear about the latest AI advancement or horror story in the media automatically equate what they've read or what they've heard to what evidence generation teams are trying to do today. So bringing all those misaligned expectations and additional baggage with them. Being specific also helps with clarifying the objectives of the initiative. Instead of saying, we use AI to analyze patient data, it is better to say we use supervised machine learning models to predict patient readmission rates based on electronic health records. So you're getting very specific with that definition, and you're not leaving ambiguity in there that could cause misaligned expectations. So while the broad term AI can be used as shorthand, like we're doing today, for meaningful discussions to take place, it is better to be more precise and contextual about the specific technologies involved.
Thank you. I love that. I love that callback to AI is just magic if we're just being so broad. And on that point, I want to turn it over to Malia again, like with your experience in evidence generation and currently looking at some of those tools. Do you think it is too broad? Have you found other more specific terms to kind of like work with? How does that impact your daily work?
I think this is a really good question. I agree with Mike. When we talk about AI in vague terms, I think it can complicate discussions, particularly around evidence generation. And I think it can actually also be a barrier to building trust in AI assisted processes. I know that when I hear the term AI and say that AI was used in a particular workflow, I immediately have many follow up questions. And what part of the process was AI used? What type of AI? Which tools? So I think if we talk about AI with increased specificity and transparency, that allows us to have more fruitful discussions. And I think perhaps it will lead to greater AI acceptance.
Thank you. Yeah, especially like the term trust here as well. Like if we were specific, like people know exactly what's going on. And like what Mike also said, like, it limits the expectation or we know exactly what's happening. So I think that's a really good point you mentioned. Let's move on to like a little bit of a different area of questioning. I have another one here that's like kind of like a twofer almost. Where do you find current research and updates on the status of AI in evidence generation? Are there any specific ways to identify evidence gaps in the literature? And I think I'm going to take it over to Ali. Like, how do you find current research and where do you look for that when it comes to AI in general?
Great question. Again, I like it. Again, current research on and updates on status of AI in evidence generation can be found through several key resources. I would say academic journals, conferences, and symposium, repositories related to AI, professional organization, even some government, as I mentioned, government and regulatory website. Like I know leading journals such as Nature, Lancet, JAMA publish frequently on cutting edge research on AI application in healthcare and evidence generation. Subscribe to those journals and setting alerts like to receive topics related that you are interested. Conferences, specific conferences like annual meetings of American Medical Informatics Association. They can provide insight into the latest advancement and allow you to network with experts in the field. Professional organization, majority of I know the audience know is for American Association for Artificial Intelligence. They publish reports and guidelines related to AI and evidence generation. Keeping eye on updates organizations such as FDA, NICE, or European Medical Agency. European a bit more advanced in terms of like adopting or some guideline related to AI and coming out with a specific like recommendation. And following those organizations, you would get some. And aside that, there's online courses and webinars. Many of those you can attend. Some of them are free, some of them not, or minimal cost. You can attend those webinars or courses and get some topics specifically related. As Mike and Malia mentioned, AI is a big umbrella. Specifically, it's good to know what exactly you're looking for and be more specific because it could be at the same time so overwhelming as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you brought up like so many different sources and resources to use for that. I don't know if we can add a lot to this, but I think we haven't heard from Zaid in a while. Zaid, do you have any other like outlets that you can kind of like mention here that would be also really good to finding some of those evidence generation gaps maybe in the literature? Yeah. What resources would you use?
Absolutely. With the ever evolving like AI landscape, I think it's really important to stay up to date and find those resources. And I think what my colleague Ali mentioned, are great resources. And just to go into some of the specific ones that I've personally used over time and found them to be really useful. Of course, subscribing to mailing lists that are specific to AI, technology, and evidence generation would be really helpful. Now, for example, signing up to the AMCP newsletter and kind of getting those news alerts in your email will kind of help you understand what's happening in the real world and where the progression is happening. But some of the other resources that I personally use include the AMA, Fierce Healthcare website and news resource, and Stat News. And I mentioned those three specifically because they also have sections that are geared towards AI and technology and how that is advancing and, the newest advancements. Plus, you can also add in your email, subscribe to them. And that way you can get, less of the spam and more of targeted alerts about some of those advancements that are happening. Now, one last tool that I'd like to mention that I also previously used and I think is very much underutilized is Google Alerts. So for those who don't know, you're able to go in and choose a topic and then create an alert for it. So that could be as simple as saying healthcare AI. And then whenever there is new content on the web that's relevant to your search term, Google will be able to send you those alerts to your email directly. So that way you could even go more specific if there's something that you would like to look into over the next month or two, let's say in evidence generation and the gaps that exist plus AI, then Google Alerts, I feel, will also be a good resource. And those are some that I've personally used over the past.
Thank you, Zaid. That was really great. And just really to back up on that one, I think most of those tools that you've mentioned are also free to use. Is that correct, Zaid?
Yes, they're all free to use.
Perfect. That's always great. Let's move on to a next question. This one is also a couple questions actually all in one. What complicates usage, adoption, and implementation of AI in evidence generation? What are the main challenges in integrating AI into existing health evidence generation frameworks? So again, basically, what are the hurdles that we have to jump when it comes to implementing AI? So kind of going a little bit deeper into what we've already kind of mentioned earlier on, really focusing on the hurdles and barriers. Malia, I think you mentioned some of those items previously. Can you kind of a little bit elaborate on what you've said previously?
Sure, Sarah. So yes, I mentioned trust in AI when we were discussing one of the other questions. And I do think there are still concerns about relying on AI output. We've seen examples where AI doesn't always work well, and that's led to a healthy dose of skepticism when it comes to AI adoption. We are working in the healthcare space, and that impacts people's lives and the treatments they receive. So as much as we want all those benefits from using AI, I think trust is still a factor when it comes to AI usage. However, I will say I'm very interested to see how this will evolve in the future. I do see a possibility where strong human AI collaboration is actually going to be used to decrease mistakes, maybe even catch human errors. So yes, it'll be really interesting to see how it progresses on that point. Now, I know that question had a couple of different parts. When it comes to challenges with implementation, I think using AI in existing evidence generation frameworks, there'll be some other types of challenges, particularly around privacy and regulatory compliance. I think there is a very strong desire to use AI responsibly, and we're starting to see guidance such as that nice position statement and then other organizations sharing their best practices, but we're still developing the roadmaps on how to do this.
Yeah, that's a really good point that we need some kind of guidance statement. And I think what NICE has been doing is absolutely a breakthrough and definitely a first step. And hopefully other organizations such as NICE will continue that. Before we move on to the next question, I kind of want to hear from Mike a little bit more on that too, just knowing how you work and kind of finding the bugs in some systems sometimes. So do you see any kind of implementation challenges or any kind of hurdles when it comes to adapting AI?
Absolutely. The one probably most important in my mind is the availability and quality of the data that you're working with. As we know in this space, data is often siloed, it's incomplete, it's inaccurate, it's in different formats and different modes. So crafting a solid data strategy is of, I think, primary importance when implementing AI to support evidence generation. Other technical challenges include model transparency. I think this was mentioned earlier, but many models in this space operate as a black box, making it difficult to interpret how the results are generated. These systems, these black box systems, also may be hard to integrate into your organization's own systems. And the technical skill required to develop and deploy and use these models may be beyond your current skill set or costly to onboard. The other thing I'll mention is often overlooked. Organizational and cultural barriers to change do exist in all industries, but they are especially prevalent in healthcare, where norms and standards are shaped by strong legacies of human expertise and rightful concern for privacy and protocol. This blind spot needs to be addressed with effective education and change management throughout the organization. So as a way to gain trust and help pave way for AI, rigorous testing, validation of ongoing monitoring of output is essential and is a big part of this as well.
Yes, thank you. And you mentioned some really important points, cost and organizational barriers. So that kind of brings me to another question. Are AI tools only feasible then for larger organizations, Mike?
I would say larger organizations do have advantages in terms of their resources and infrastructure and expertise, but that doesn't mean smaller organizations cannot participate. So one of the things that's happened over the past 2 years, the explosion of AI for the masses, thank you, ChatGPT, that we've seen, it has engendered many cloud-based entry-level scalable platforms that can be leveraged with minimal in-house resources. We're all familiar with the large established platforms like Azure AI, Google Vertex, AWS, IBM Watson, and others, but there are many new and emerging options for smaller organizations that start at the entry level and then scale up as you expand. For teams that are looking to build your own, there's a variety of open source tools and libraries to consider. Turnkey black box platforms offer many solutions in different niche areas, from data and analytics to data modeling and visualization to chatbots to automation. So there's a whole bunch of providers out there operating in the cloud space that can start at a very low cost entry point. The alternative approach is, instead of trying for the moonshot and trying to kind of, not to use another cliche, but boil the ocean, maybe target a niche area and build up from there. AI and intelligent automation can improve productivity and reduce manual efforts up and down the evidence generation process, from drafting documentation and reviewing content to data cleansing to plain language summarization, as was mentioned, to offering a Q&A bot against protocols and process automations. These can be implemented relatively low cost with cloud-based platforms, and it gets you in the game. The important thing to keep in mind is to avoid waiting for the perfect solution or for industry certainty or direction to get clearer and more definitive. You got to get your feet wet. You got to step into the pool. Partner with or acquire skilled help. Start small and take a proof of concept approach. Measure, test, evaluate the results to prove out value, and then scale up one use case at a time. There's no need to jump in all at once, but you have to get your foot wet in the pool.
Yeah, thank you. So basically the most important thing is to just start somewhere, right? Like that's what we have to do.
Start and learn.
Yeah, start and learn. Yeah, it's an iterative process, definitely. And I would like to toss it over actually to Zaid real quick. Do you have anything to add? Like, are AI tools only feasible for larger organizations?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mike already talked about and mentioned. So I believe at this point in time that AI has been out there for more than a year and a half now. I think all organizations, small or large, should have at least started looking into how to implement AI within their organizations. This could be, involving outsourcing the technology to outside providers or having them in-house, but at least starting to create some sort of roadmap. In fact, I would also say, organizations, even the small ones, there could be a point made that AI could lead to even higher efficiencies when it's smaller teams, and that time saved could lead to those, increase in the bottom line. So creating at least some sort of focus groups within the internal teams to discuss how could AI be implemented, which types of LLMs should be used, which ones are the most beneficial, at least having those thoughts initially and starting to create that roadmap, I think will come a long way. So definitely it's not just for large organizations, especially at this point in time, it's for everybody.
Yeah, those are really good points too. And I kind of want to bring it back to the conversation around trust. Zaid, what do you think? Like, how should we approach trust regarding AI? I think we have made some points here and there and like tangentially like touched on that already. But like, can you kind of summarize that? Like, how should we approach trust?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question because trust itself is a huge word, but it's also very important, especially in our industry, the healthcare industry, where patients' lives and information is at stake. And I think my colleagues already alluded to a lot of the points. But to me, when I think of trust, especially with AI and this technology, I like to think about it in two themes. One is transparency, which is really big. And then the second one is the fairness of the data and the output. So to start talking about transparency, you need to make sure that you know exactly how your AI system is working. Even if you're taking something that's off the shelf, make sure that you or your team understand exactly the functioning of the AI system, what data has been used to train it, because that really delves into the specificity of the output that you get and how relevant the information is. So really, what data set have been fed into it, what guide rails does the system has in place. And also, I would say most importantly, when we look at trust and transparency, we want to know exactly where does the output come from. So make sure that your system lets you know and references the sources from which it was able to provide the output. I feel having that kind of like window into how things are functioning and how you're reaching out to the final output plays into transparency, and that's a big factor within the trust that you'll have in the system and the final result. Second one, which I'll try to keep it short, is fairness, in the sense that making sure that your output is unbiased. And we already alluded to this previously, but making sure that the data that you're getting is really relevant and it's not being biased in any way. And that's a whole different topic that we also can get to. But just in the interest of time, to me, it's really the unbiased of the data and also the transparency into the inner workings of the system really help with the trust.
That's great. And I think you brought out a really good point of like the human component in there as well when it comes to trust in general. Mike, you can kind of like a little bit elaborate on that too? Like, how can we ensure trust regarding AI, especially when it comes to like that human AI interaction?
Well, there's table stakes, right? So adherence to the governing bodies like GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, and others is a baseline. Also, proper information security practices around how data is handled and the correct way to design your infrastructure, et cetera. But I would say one thing that I've found important in my own work is establishment of an AI governance team. This is a cross-section of multidisciplinary folks from around the organization that get together and set the policies and processes and structures before you get started. It's much easier to align on governance and structure and framework prior to having a solution. That way you're not you're a little bit more agnostic on how to approach it, but it's imperative that you get good representation from both the technical teams, the medical teams, and the business teams in that governance model. I would also say rigorous testing and validation of the solution is essential, using realistic data, of course, having it de-identified and anonymized, but using realistic data to make sure the results are in line with established benchmarks. From a development standpoint, benchmark integrated development is a great approach. And this is where AI, as it develops, can continually monitor its own output to make sure it falls within established parameters. And then post-implementation, this monitoring should continue to guard against any inaccuracies or drift caused by the data. The last thing I'll mention is do not underestimate the value of training and change management. AI solutions are so unlike the technologies that stakeholders have encountered in the past. They're non-deterministic. And the non-deterministic nature of these solutions often undermine the trust of the stakeholder and their understanding of what the solution is supposed to be.
Thank you. I think that was really great, especially touching on like the quality assurance component here that you already mentioned. And I think like to that note, I think we have like time for one more question, and that one kind of like looks also on quality assurance here, very much related to trust in general. How do we verify the output received from AI tools? In other words, how do we ensure the quality? And I'm just going to toss this over to Ali real quick to just like close us out with an answer on that question.
Perfect. Yeah. As my colleagues alluded, is like any products or any tools come to the market, you need to build that trust and establishing that trust. Saying that verifying the output from AI models is essential to ensure accuracy and reliability. There are different ways we need to approach this one. First, as again alluded, is cross-validation with multiple sources. Compare the AI-generated result with those produced by human experts to identify any discrepancy or errors. This helps addressing the AI tool's performance. Using multiple AI tools, if possible, use different AI tools or algorithms to analyze the same data to see consistently you're getting the same results as you're looking for. Review the input, as my colleague mentioned. your output as good as your input. If the data integrity check doesn't get past the quality, definitely you're going to facing some problem. Ensure that the data fed into that AI system is accurate, clean, representative of population or scenario you're working on. Model transparency and explainability is one of those things you have to understand. As Mike mentioned, most of these models are complex and like a black box. We need to understand the AI models and what's going on into the model. Again, one of the other things we can do is independent validation, use third-party reviews, engaging independent experts, and analyzing for example, any errors or failures pops up. Analyze those instances where the AI tool's output was incorrect or failed, understand the nature of the error, and refine it, the tool, make sure to get to the point you want to the answer should look like in the real world evidence cases. And the last is going to be peer review and collaboration with experts in the AI, making sure different perspectives can help identify potential issues that may not be obvious to a single reviewers. Yeah, these are the ballpark I would recommend checking the output, the quality.
Yes. Thank you, Ali. And literally, look, it sounds like that definitely nobody's going to lose their job anytime soon. There definitely has to be a human component to verify and validate the data output that we get here from AI tools. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the speakers. Unfortunately, this was definitely our last question we were able to take today. And since we were not able to get to every question, we will follow up with the attendees who have some outstanding questions still individually via email after this event. And we would like to also thank everyone again who submitted questions during this event and for joining us today for our webinar on AI and health evidence generation. And we definitely would love to continue the conversation with you. So please feel free to connect with the speakers on LinkedIn. And also the Formulary Decisions team will attend AMCP Nexus in Las Vegas. We will be presenting there a CE session titled The Artificial Intelligence Frontier, Navigating Data-Driven Formulary Decisions. That will take place on Tuesday morning at 8:30 a.m. sharp. And we will also be presenting a research poster with some additional information on today's topics. And we look forward to speaking with you and to reconnect there. Additionally, like I said in the beginning of this recording or this webinar, the recording and the slides will be available within about 1 week of this live event on the Cencora website. And before we adjourn, I'd like to end on the following note. In the landscape of AI and innovation, it is not only important to generate the evidence like we went over today, but also thoughtfully share evidence through various channels. And I'd be remiss not to mention our platform, which is Formulary Decisions, and is free for healthcare decision makers to access clinical and economic information on drug products, to make informed decisions. In addition to third-party content, biopharma companies can also share resources with the healthcare decision makers through platform modules. The types of resources generated and shared may be based on where the product is in its approval process phases. So disease state information may be more valuable in the pre-approval space, like you can see on the slide right here, whereas maybe an economic value story is best suited for the peri-approval space. But also following approval, there are still many opportunities to continue engagement with healthcare decision makers with evidence and information to facilitate ongoing formulary review. And on that note, I would like to also remind everyone that for inquiries on the Formulary Decision platform or questions related to information exchange between healthcare decision makers and biopharma companies, you can email our team at the address that you see right now on your screen. And additionally, healthcare decision makers can register for complimentary access at formularydecisions.com/register. And if you are interested in attending more of these engaging and insightful webinars, then please visit the AMCP website for a list of upcoming webinars. And with that, we would like to thank you once again for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and thank you again for joining us. And please join us next time.
Thank you.